Hey guys, this is Ben, the creator with Monumental Heart Media, and today I'm here with Dulce Encinas with Kindness Therapy. She's going to tell us a little bit about her story, how she started her company, and how long she's been just going at it as an entrepreneur. With that being said, how long you been in business and how did you get started?
Okay, I am a licensed mental health therapist. I have a license here in Arizona as a social worker. I've been on the field for over 12 years, but I decided to finally open business this month. So March 1st was when I actually officially opened business. So officially, I've only been working for a month. Thankfully, it's been a great turnout. And I've been in the field for over 12 years. So I've worked with every field that you can think of when it comes to mental health.
What was the inspiration or what got you there to actually even go to school for that? Or what's your origin story with that?
I was born and raised in Nogales, Sonora, so I am a first-generation Mexican here in the States. Woo.
Viva la raza.
Yes. And so I was a migrant with my parents. I was probably around 10 or 11 when we decided to come to the States. And so helping my community has always been a big thing. Part of me adapting to the U.S. culture has been going into these spaces where you're not really seen or heard. And so I've always been very much an advocate. When I was in high school, I got very involved in doing community workshops just for health and supporting each other. And we're talking like 2004, so
Wow,
this
so
was
that was pretty mature for that age.
like,
52-year-old. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think I've always had the I want to do more
Yeah.
kind of mentality. So I was very involved in like outreach groups, and we were partnering with Mariposa Health, which is in Nogales, just to help advocate for health needs for teens at that time. So I was always involved doing something else. I've always been the let's do more
Yeah.
person, right? And I decided I was going to go to school for Mexican American Studies because I wanted to be an immigration lawyer. Since I'm an immigrant myself, I was like, I want to help my people. So I ended up going to undergrad, and I fell in love with history. I fell in love with Spanish literature and just everything about it. And so I started doing community work. And that's pretty much how social work started. I went to outreach meetings for teens. I was a teen myself, but in my head, I was an adult.
Wow.
And so I started doing outreach for young girls in middle school and early high school freshman year and talking about what it was like to go to college as a first generation student. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the inspiration, with becoming part of them. I've always been very comfortable not fitting in.
Yeah.
Because I speak Spanish fluently and I jump back and forth in between Spanglish, like English and Spanish. And I think back in the day, that wasn't a thing. You were either very Americanized and English only, or you were very Mexicanized and very like old school. This is how it works. And I felt very comfortable being like, I don't fit in either of them. So I'm going to do whatever I want. And so I think that really inspired a lot of the girls that felt like outcasts or were not seen or heard. Very much of the community that's involved in gangs or cholos or cholas.
Yeah.
And I think for that specific group of people, college is not really a thing you talk about. And so to me, it felt like I was doing something bigger. And that opened the door for me writing a couple of grants. So I did get a couple grants as a freshman or sophomore in college. And I was doing after-school programs for just a handful of students in Southside high schools in Tucson. And I had a couple mentors that were social workers, and they're like, you're great at it. Like, you can really touch people. You should probably do this as a career. And I was like, nah, I'm going to do law school. And I think the more that I got involved with the community, the more that I felt fulfilled. I was like, I think I'm going to go to law school. So I ended up going to social work. I did my master's in social work here in Phoenix. And same thing, the first year I did high school students. That was my first internship. And then the second one, I was actually in a DV shelter.
What is that?
Domestic violence shelter.
Oh, wow.
And so now I was working at different population of women. And I think the more that I grow into who I am, the more that I think that's where my niche goes into, like helping underserved, first generation Latina women. I also work with everything, but I think that's definitely the point in turn where I can really feel like I can inspire. And I don't agree with a lot of the things that we as a culture agree in, and we Mexican, just from my own perspective. And so I'm very comfortable in coming in and being like, we're not going to do that. So I graduated from my master's. I started working with high-risk teenagers, and I was doing family therapy. And because I speak Spanish, I was doing a lot of bilingual work. And so we're talking about first-generation migrant families and how do you handle your children now that they're in the States, right? And how do we help them? How do we support them? And I did that for about 4 or 5 years, which is intensive therapy. And then I moved over to a clinic, and then from a clinic to programs helping children that are migrant children that are coming from Guatemala or Honduras, El Salvador. I probably did that for about 2 or 3 years. And I was like, okay, I think I can do more. And so I started working with adults, and then I was like, I need to open my own private practice. So I want to say maybe in the last 2 or 3 years is when I started being very serious about starting my own business. Here we are.
It shows a lot about your character. You were about 14, 15 when you started getting involved with this kind of stuff? Like, and it shows a lot about who you are, where your values are. And actually, that's going to be the set of questions I'm going to ask you is, what are your core values overall as an individual? And then also as a professional with your private practice, like, what are your core values as a company as well?
The name of the company is very intentional. It's called Kindness Therapy, right? And it's based on that, kindness. I do believe, and I know I'm going to sound super corny for it, and it's okay. Like, I believe that love heals everything. I think the technical word that we use in mental health is safe attachment. And I do truly believe that if people had true, honest, unconditional love, they would have kindness, and kindness would heal everything. So when I think of core values, I think of that. I think of love, support, kindness, empathy. When people come into my office, I want to make sure that they feel seen, heard, and safe. And everybody's welcome to come to the office and check it out. But the purpose of the office is to feel at home, homey, right? And if we need to speak Spanglish, we'll speak Spanglish. And if we need to speak Spanish, we speak Spanish. I want to make sure that every single patient, client who walks into that door feels seen and heard and feels a connection and empathy and love. And some clients that I've had, and some of the clients, ended services and then decided to look for services with me. And so these are people that I've known for years at this point.
Yeah.
And they continue to come on for that, I think, validation, support, and love that maybe they're not getting in other places. And I pride myself on that. I definitely look at the company and myself as a whatever it takes kind of company, right? And so if I have to give therapy to somebody for 5 years is what it is. But I think that's also very radical within our mental health field, because we are trained to solve a problem. And once the problem is solved, then we can move on. But I challenge that a little bit, because some of these problems are not problems that can be solved, like being a first-generation college student trying to navigate the world, right? Or being a migrant woman or man who's in a toxic relationship trying to get out of it and then figuring out what support systems to get. Some of these problems are bigger than give you some pills, some interventions. I think the company, what I'm building here is with that purpose to do something bigger than that.
Wow. No, I could definitely see the passion. And you were 15 years old when you started, so you've been caring for a very long time. And I think, honestly, I feel the world needs more people like you that genuinely cares. And because you never know what people are going through, and just kindness can make a big difference.
Gigantic.
So if this is the first time people are going to watch this podcast, either online, and they get to meet you for the first time, what do you actually specialize in? What do you do?
Okay.
So your company.
Number one specialization is trauma. In the process of getting certified in different forms of therapy to help with that. But majority of the work that I've done is around understanding trauma and healing trauma. Now, trauma can be anything, right? It can be a pretty bad car accident, or it could be years of emotional abuse, right? It presents itself in different ways. I think when people hear mental health, they're expecting for me to give diagnosis when I say things like that, like depression, anxiety, and this. I think diagnoses are a the representation of the core problem. And so when you tell me what do I specialize in, I want to say trauma, right? I think that what the difference in between my business and other businesses who also provide services around trauma is my experience and my background with Mexican American studies, because there's so much more trauma than just a car accident.
Yeah.
There's generations historically of trauma within our people that sometimes a lot of therapists missed, especially if they're not part of the community. So it's not just the trauma piece, but it's also like understanding Latino culture and providing services around that, not being informed about
Yeah, we don't believe in depression or anxiety. It's like, no seas llorón.
Exactly.
Get over it.
Look it up.
Yeah.
So, si lloras, te va a ir mejor, right? And there's a lot of normalization of abuse in our culture. Everybody thinks the chancla is a joke. That's still physical. Reprimand. So there's learning my culture, understanding my culture, even understanding pieces of the culture that I think majority of therapists who don't have that exposure to our culture don't get. Right? Like, working against the family is in an individualistic approach is not going to help because we're family oriented, right? And so saying, no, don't talk to your mom or don't talk to your dad and let's set these boundaries, that might be pretty feasible for an individualistic kind of culture. But for us, that is the most disrespect you can.
But that's your sister. Even if they're toxic, oh, that's your sister, that's your brother, that's your aunt. It's okay. Get over it.
Exactly.
No, I get it. I understand where you're coming from.
And I think there's also like a piece or a layer of toughness, right? Like we take pride in being tough and being resilient, but until what point? What's the cost of that? And so I see a lot of depression, anxiety, symptoms in us not being able to be in tune with our emotions or be soft, if you want to say that. I think that a lot of therapists will be able to tell you what I'm telling you, but being part of the community myself and surviving trauma myself and giving that perspective, I think that's what makes kindness different than majority of mental health services.
That's amazing. As you guys already know, Monumental Heart Media is a company that specializes in content creation and social media management. If you're a brand new entrepreneur or if you've been in business for a while, you probably heard this term called the call to action. And what that is, how could people find you online? Do you have a phone number, a website? With that being said, what's your call to action?
So currently we have a website called kindnesstherapy.us, and you can find me on Instagram as the handle is DS Encinas T, pretty much my initials, right? Which is the same as my email address. So it's dsencinast@gmail.com. You can find my information there. I will be opening a Instagram page pretty soon. And so once I get the details, I'll go ahead and hand them over to you.
Sweet.
Reach out to me.
All right. Awesome. I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you.